Please note that the following is written by an observer of the universe. The observer is writing stories of those she follows. Together beings build, together beings destroy. Part 1. What do you build and what do you destroy? If you alone destroy or build something, it makes little difference. If communities destroy or build, big things happen. Observing planets and communities, I have seen planets destroyed and planets prosper. Your life and world is dependent on what you do. There was one planet very similar to yours, large populace, caring only for their own ideals and prosperity, not for their planet. Their planet was a lot smaller than yours. Every little thing they discovered, they misused for their own needs. Due to the planet's size, every impact drastically changed the course of the planet. The ecosystem was completely different, but everything had a purpose. The fauna supported each other, utilizing the cycle of life. They only killed when they needed to eat. The plant life had dark green stems, pink leaves with purple poisonous needles. These plants had bright colored fruit which had to be fought for to be gathered. There was little plant life that had no dangers, which sprouted healthy fruit. They were easy to replant but difficult to sustain without proper knowledge and supervision. The herbivorous animals had evolved, having hard shells on their backs, preventing the needle from penetrating them. The carnivores had 2 extra limbs, with sharp claws, slicing through the plant life and penetrating the flesh and shells of the helpless omnivores. The planet inhabitants lived on their primal instincts, despising advancements that they were not familiar with. Hunting the creatures and plant life, they used spears, bows, and shields. These tools were crafted from the remains of that which they hunted. Shields from the omnivores, arrows from the poisonous needles, and scythes from the sharp claws. I know what you are thinking. They used advancements to craft these weapons. I'm only writing what I'm seeing. I see who you are. Wink, wink. There were outliers born from families who showed inclinations of seeking advancements for the colony. Those outliers were monitored to prevent them from straying onto the path of discovery. If they showed an inclination of following that route, they would get executed. There was one outlier, Raisha. She was an intellectual with a masculine build. She was skilled in survival. At a young age, all the inhabitants were trained to survive by hunting, studying the fauna, preparing food, and medicine. She mastered all these skills and became better after every hunt. She never liked feeling trapped and wanted to live a life of freedom. She made preparations to escape. She didn't want to do it alone. Having anyone of the colony find out what she planned would mean a swift death. She had a few hundred cycles before becoming of age. Before that, she devised a plan to not live alone, but to leave with someone. When she came of age, she purposely sought a partner to bore a child. She seeks someone who would not care if she were to die. Someone who only wanted it for the pleasure. For someone to disappear from the colony was not unheard of. There were days where citizens would not return, found slain by the fauna. No one would go looking for a citizen, as it would be dangerous. Frankly, death was inevitable. A few cycles later, she was with child. It was now or never. She planned to escape during a hunting expedition. She had stored tools and resources on the outskirts of the hunting zone. When the time was right, she fled towards her stash. As she got to the stash, she made sure no one followed before uncovering it. On her person, she had food for 4 cycles. She had to journey 30 cycles, ensuring she was at a safe distance before feeling secure. She had it quite tough the first few cycles, having to fend off creatures and the plant life. It became harder on her having to travel with daily rationed food, as new life grew within her. She gathered food when possible, mended bruises when in dire, and looked for nightly shelter when exhausted. Some days she wanted to return to the colony for safety, but who knows what they would have done to her. The newborn's time drew closer with every cycle. It didn't get easier, let me tell you that. A few cycles to go, she needed shelter to safeguard herself and the newborn. She stumbled upon a cliff face where there was a cave entrance. She knew this was going to be her only option, unsure what it was used for, or if there were any dangers. Entering the cave with weapon at the ready, she slowly crept forward without making a sound. There were a few critters hiding inside, but scattered by the sight of her. Due to the critters, she knew there were no larger creatures inside. There was no even ground within the cave, sharp rocks scattered across the surface, and damp areas from water dripping from the roof. The cave was a hindrance to giving birth. For the birth to be successful and safe, she began gathering fuel for a fire, ready to place for the baby, and a softish spot to lay down on to give birth. Enduring a challenging journey, she welcomed new life into the world, a boy. She named him Ranir, signifying intellectual warrior. During his growth, she taught him the survival techniques she was taught. She allowed him to explore his imagination, to grow and discover. His youth was a bit difficult to handle, as there were many dangers lurking around. Darkness kept her awake, and light raised her awareness. She cultivated in front of the cave with seeds that she took from the colony. She built defenses scattered with poisonous spikes around the farm. Times were tough at first. When Ranir grew old enough to help, their lives became much easier. Ranir was a strong, fearless warrior. He made use of his skills developing weaponry and tools enhancing their everyday lives. He built better defenses, faster irrigation systems to water the plants, and cooked succulent dishes, restoring vitality. He set traps, baiting and snaring all the tiny critters squirreling around. He went out to hunt and train his tracking when he was not cultivating the land, making sure that if he leaves, his mother would be safe from any harm. On a hunting and gathering trip, Ranir stalked his prey. Suddenly the ground shook, leaves were falling, and a deafening crack pulsated in the distance. He immediately raced back to the cave while the leaves were fluttering to the ground and the dusty air filled his sense of smell. Standing in front of the cave, a few boulders laid on the cultivated land and a part of the cave entrance was blocked. There was a small gap which he was able to pass through. Rushing deeper into the cave looking for his mother, he found her crushed under rocks that fell from the ceiling. He was too late. Hardened by death, a tear formed in his eye. He no longer needs to worry for her, as she has finally been set free. He saw that she was pointing to something. He moved into the direction where she pointed at. The cave walls parted, leading into a deeper part of the cave. The cave grew larger and wider the deeper he went in. It was dark, filled with sharp stalagmites and stalactites. Creaking sounds bounced across the walls. Water droplets plinked onto the rocks, echoing melodic crashes. In the distance, there were rays falling from a hole in the roof onto a shiny structure. The structure had a weird shape to it. It was colored in black with a cyan tint. There were square-shaped objects that were clear like water but hard like rock. The structure looked like a rock with long cylinders on both ends. Moving closer, he looked through the clear square object and saw a corpse laying inside. The corpse was clothed in a suit with hexagonal shapes all over and had strange handheld objects hanging from its side. Upon closer inspection, he saw a shiny blinking item next to the body. He reached for the item. The corpse grabbed his arm and stared Ranir straight in the eyes. Ranir felt a strange heat sensation rushing from where he was held to his mind. Within an instant, the corpse released and disintegrated, leaving the suit, items, and the ship intact. Ranir became enlightened with boundless information. He learned from the corpse that the ship landed here cycles ago, but had no knowledge or resources to leave this planet. The being tried to survive on this planet, but it was not suitable for their kind. The being used the time to meditate and preserve its body and mind. If someone came to find him, they could show them what happened. Ranir, with his new given knowledge, studied what was being preserved. There were tools on the ship for mining, building, research, and handheld weapons which fired projectiles of energy. He began using these tools to his advantage to study the fauna, mine for minerals, and build a factory. The factory he built was on a small scale, but it assisted him in preparing more tools and weaponry. He got overwhelmed by greed and wanted to advance even more. He could not do it alone and devised a plan to get more inhabitants involved. Even though they would be against it, he needed to enlighten them for his purpose.